He made me feel ashamed of my own body after childbirth. His mother whispered that I had let myself go, and his friends laughed when they saw me with the baby. He said I had turned into a shadow, that I was drained and uninteresting to anyone. But while I was rocking our son to sleep at night, he was resting with another woman. This is a story about humiliation, exhaustion, betrayal, and how I reclaimed my dignity. It's about the day I stopped crying, packed my bags, and left him alone with his perfect life. He thought I would break. But a real life without me, that was his punishment. My name is Catherine, I'm 28, and just a few years ago, I believed I had a perfect life. Henry and I met when I was in college. He was older, confident, and always knew what he wanted. I saw him as a man capable of protecting, supporting, and becoming a pillar of strength. We built our dreams together about a house, children, trips, even brainstorming names for our future sons. When I got pregnant, he said it was the best news of his life. I remember him holding my hand during the first ultrasounds, filming videos, laughing, and calling me his hero. I truly thought we had become closer, that this child would make our bond even stronger. The first days after our son's birth were difficult, but beautiful. I didn't sleep at night, barely ate, but holding the baby in my arms made it feel like the greatest joy of my life. I expected him to feel the same way. But with each passing day, something in Henry changed. He became colder, more irritable, seemingly exhausted by everything related to me and the baby. I tried to ignore it. I told myself he's just adapting. This is stressful for him too. But deep down, I already felt it. We were no longer a team. I didn't know then that everything that seemed like care would soon turn into humiliation. And that the day I gave birth to our son became the day he started to drift away. I barely recognized myself in the mirror after giving birth. My body had changed and I knew it. But I had delivered a child. I had given life to our son. I thought he understood that he was proud of me. The first blow came unexpectedly. One evening, as I struggled to squeeze into my old jeans, Henry walked past and tossed out, without even looking my way, "You could at least try to pull yourself together a little." I didn't marry a tired housewife. I froze. Then I forced a smile, thinking it was a joke. But he wasn't joking. It got worse. At dinners with his parents, I would hear his mother whisper, "I told you Catherine wouldn't maintain herself after the baby." And his father would add, "Henry, you need to make sure your wife doesn't neglect herself. It's important for the family image." I sat next to them, pretending not to hear. I smiled, even though my hands were shaking. After every such gathering, I would come home, undress in front of the mirror, and search for flaws. Maybe they're right? I asked myself. Maybe I really have become unattractive? One day, I finally spoke up. "Henry," I said softly, "I'm struggling. I'm not sleeping, the baby cries all night. I need support, not criticism." He just sneered, "Support? Catherine, you've just gotten soft. Look at yourself, you even wear makeup less often. Your eyes used to sparkle, and now you constantly walk around in a dressing gown." I felt as if I'd been doused with cold water. From that moment on, I started silently pulling away. I didn't argue, didn't cry in front of him. I carried my pain inside and still believed that maybe this was just a phase. That everything would pass once our son got a little older. But this phase was only beginning. And very soon, I realized that in his eyes, I was no longer his wife, just a shadow of who I once was. A few months after our son's birth, Henry started to disappear. First, for a few hours to get groceries, clear his head, meet up with colleagues. Then, it became the norm. He simply wouldn't come home at night. Once, I called him at 1 a.m, holding our crying baby. "Henry, where are you?" I asked, trying not to cry. "I need to rest, Catherine." "I'm exhausted," he replied coldly. "You're at home. You have time to sleep." I stood in the middle of the dark kitchen, in old pajamas, with a newborn in my arms, and I didn't recognize my husband. The man who once promised he would be the best dad in the world. He started going away for the weekend with friends. When I asked why he didn't take us along, he laughed. "Are you serious? I want at least one day without baby screaming." His mother was supportive. Give him some space, Catherine. Men need to rest too. From what? I barely whispered. From his own son? She curled her lips. From you, I suppose. Those words killed the last shred of hope in me. I stayed at home, with a fever, no energy, no sleep. The baby cried at night, my back hurt, and my hands trembled from fatigue. Meanwhile, he posted photos on his stories from bars, smiling, with the caption, "Boys finally getting some rest." I was torn apart by pain and shame. I didn't know what hurt more, his indifference or how easily he pretended we didn't exist. One evening, I couldn't take it anymore and cried when he returned. "I can't do this anymore, Henry. I'm exhausted. I don't remember when I last slept. I'm scared." He shrugged. "Well, maybe you're just not cut out for motherhood." These words hit harder than any shout. Because at that moment, I understood he wasn't resting from care. He was resting from us. I remember that morning vividly. It was cold, and I stood in front of the mirror in old pajamas, holding our son. My hair was tied up messily, dark circles under my eyes, my body still recovering from childbirth. I looked at my reflection and repeated to myself, "This is temporary. I'll be myself again." The important thing is not to give up. At that moment, Henry walked into the room. He stopped at the door, looked me up and down, and winced. "God, what have you become?" he said softly, but with disgust. "You look like a fat, sleeping blob. A scary scarecrow." I froze. The words hit harder than if he had screamed. The baby in my arms started whimpering, and I tried to soothe him so as not to hear the rest. But he didn't stop. "Look at yourself. Even your eyes are dull. You're not the woman I married anymore." Just then, his mother appeared in the doorway. She heard the last sentence, and instead of stopping him, she smiled. "Henry, I told you. You should have chosen a simpler wife. Not everyone handles motherhood well." She shrugged and left without even looking at me. I stood there, hugging the baby, feeling hot tears stream down my cheeks. The room was silent, only the breathing of our son, the only sound that brought me back to reality. A scary scarecrow. The words repeated in my head over and over. I didn't even have the strength to reply. I just stayed silent. Friends hadn't visited us in ages. He said he didn't like noise in the house. My parents lived far away, and his family, they became the only circle where I was an outsider. I learned to keep silent to avoid provoking him, to smile so as not to annoy him, to live carefully so as not to hear those words again. But somewhere deep inside, beneath this exhausted silence, something else was starting to be born: fury. Not anger, not resentment, but a quiet, cold fury that was waiting for its moment. I didn't know then that every humiliation was a brick in the wall I would one day build between us. And that when this wall became high enough, I would simply leave, without looking back. That morning, I woke up earlier than usual. Our son was turning 1, our first family birthday, a date I had looked forward to with excitement and tenderness. I baked a small cake, simple, homemade, with cream and a blue candle in the shape of the number 1. The kitchen smelled of vanilla. The baby was laughing in his high chair, and I looked at the door, waiting for Henry. He was supposed to return last night. He said he went away on business. I didn't text him first. I didn't want to seem clingy again. But an hour passed, then 2, then a day, and he didn't come home. I was sitting on the floor, rocking the baby, when I felt my phone vibrate in my hand. A message from a friend. "Catherine, I don't know how to tell you, but look at this." A link to Instagram. I clicked it, and my world fell apart. On the screen, a photo of Henry. He was sitting in a restaurant, smiling in a new shirt with a glass of wine. Opposite him, a woman. Young, well-groomed, in a red dress. They were holding hands. And beneath the photo, the caption, "My favorite day." I froze, as if doused with ice water. My favorite day. The day our son was born. It felt like someone had punched me in the chest. I looked at the little boy playing with his blocks, and in that moment, I felt such a void that even breathing became difficult. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't call. I just sat there, silently. The silence was so profound that I could hear my own heart beating. A few hours later, he called. His voice was calm, even slightly annoyed. I got delayed. Don't make a scene, Catherine. You were celebrating, I replied quietly. Just not with us. He was silent for a few seconds, then said coldly, You're the one who made it so that no one wants to celebrate with you. You've become unbearable. I hung up. And then something clicked inside me. I lifted my head, looked in the mirror at the woman he called a fat, sleeping blob. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't see failure in her. I saw an ending, but not mine. His. That evening, I didn't cry. I just opened the closet, took out a suitcase, and started packing. I knew the next morning he would wake up, but we would be gone. I don't know how long I just sat there with the phone in my hand. Maybe a minute. Maybe an hour. But when I lifted my eyes, I knew for certain I couldn't go back to this. A strange, sticky silence hung in the house. The cake sat on the table, the candle unlit. Our son fell asleep on the sofa, his little fingers clutching his favorite toy. I looked at him and realized, for his sake, I couldn't allow myself to be humiliated anymore. I had to become strong. At least now. I didn't scream. Didn't call. Didn't write to friends. Didn't ask, what should I do? I just got up and started packing. Baby blankets, bottles, favorite books, a few sets of clothes. Passport, documents, money, phone. Everything quickly, silently, without hysteria. When I walked past his closet, I saw his shirts, meticulously ironed, folded just as he liked them. And I felt nothing. No love, no hate. Just emptiness. I left the keys on the table. And on a small piece of paper, I wrote, You said I ruined your life. Look at what it looks like now without me. I didn't sign it. Didn't date it. I just placed the note next to the toaster, where he always set his coffee cup. Then I picked up my son, gently wrapped him in a blanket, and quietly walked out of the house. The night air was cool, but I felt warmth. Unexpected, almost forgotten, the warmth of freedom. We rode in the taxi in silence. I looked out the window and thought how strange it was. When people scream, it doesn't always mean pain. True pain is silence. A complete, deafening silence, when you can't even cry anymore. I didn't know what I would do next, where I would live, where I would start. But I knew one thing. I would never allow anyone to speak to me the way he did, ever again. The first days after leaving were the hardest. I woke up in the small apartment I'd rented through an acquaintance and for a second thought it was all a dream. But my son was sleeping next to me in an old cradle lent to me by a friend, and I remembered. I really left. At first, I was scared. The day stretched endlessly. I counted every dollar, every bottle of baby food, every breath. But even in this fatigue, even amid the chaos of boxes and strollers, I felt something I hadn't known in a long time: peace. No yelling, no sarcastic jokes, no one measuring my worth by the size of my jeans or the amount of makeup. I could just be myself. And that was enough. With each day, I learned to live anew. I worked from home. I started taking small design orders because I had studied art before the pregnancy. My first paycheck was ridiculously small, but I burst into tears holding it. It wasn't money, it was freedom. In time, I signed up for a gym. I remember standing in front of the mirror in a stretched-out tracksuit, red with shame, afraid that everyone was watching. But no one was watching. No one was judging. And with every workout, I felt my body obeying me again. The weight wasn't just physical that disappeared, the emotional one did too. The friend who had been by my side all this time once said, "You're different, Catherine. Your eyes sparkle again." I smiled. Because once, those words belonged to him, the one who did everything to extinguish that sparkle. And now it was back, but without him. I posted a few photos with my son in the park. Sunny, peaceful, genuine. And, of course, he saw them. Because a few days later, I got a message, "You look great. Can we talk?" I didn't reply. Because I already knew, the person who once made you feel like a scary scarecrow never deserves to see you flourish. Silence became my weapon. Before, I tried to explain, to prove, to justify myself. Now, I just lived. And the calmer I became, the stronger my retribution was. A few months passed. My life began to revolve around new habits, morning walks with my son, working on projects, coffee with a friend, silence. I started laughing again, not for someone, not out of courtesy, but simply because I wanted to. And just when I finally felt like I was breathing freely, he appeared. It happened one evening. I had just put the little one to sleep when the doorbell rang. When I opened it, Henry stood on the doorstep. Pale, disheveled, in a crumpled shirt, his eyes red. His hands were trembling. "Catherine," he said, almost whispering. "Please, we need to talk." I was silent. I looked at him and saw not my husband, but an empty shell of who he once was. "I ruined everything," he began. "She left me. I thought I needed to rest. That I was tired of all this. But you don't understand how much it hurts without you both. I don't sleep at night. I want to see my son. Don't take him away from me." His voice trembled, his eyes shimmered with tears. The same man who called me a scary scarecrow was standing before me, broken and pathetic. I stood in the doorway, calm, composed. Silent. Because what can you say to someone who broke you with words for years and now asks for forgiveness only because he's alone? You say, "Don't take my son away from me?" I repeated quietly. "But you did that yourself, Henry. Not when you cheated on me, but when he was crying at night and you were in another woman's arms." He lowered his eyes. Then he took a step forward, but I didn't back away. "I've changed," I said. "And not because of you. Because of myself. And for his sake." He cried again, but I felt no pity. Only a strange relief, as if I had finally let go of something I had carried for a long time. "Catherine, I want to fix everything," he pleaded. "That's impossible," I replied calmly. "Because what you broke has already become new. Without you." I closed the door. A long silence stood behind it, then I heard his footsteps fading away. I walked to the window, the streetlights were already on. My son was sleeping peacefully. And for the first time in a long time, I smiled not out of pain, but out of peace. He thought I would seek revenge. But I simply learned to live without him. And for a man who was accustomed to my tears, that was the ultimate retribution. After that night, he tried to return a few more times. He called, wrote, came by the house. I didn't answer. Not because I wanted to make him suffer, simply because there was nothing left to say. Silence became the worst punishment. It stretched between us like cold glass in which he saw his true self. And it seemed, for the first time, he realized what he had truly lost. Through mutual acquaintances, I learned that his mistress had left him a month after I did. It turned out she didn't want a ready-made family, didn't want his yelling and exhaustion. She simply disappeared without even taking her things. Then he lost his job. The company downsized, and his reputation as an unstable family man and the scandalous posts everyone had seen on social media did their damage. His friends, the same ones who used to laugh when he humiliated me, gradually turned away. They didn't want a toxic element in their companies. I accidentally ran into his mother at the supermarket one day. She had aged, looking tired. When she saw me with my son, her face twitched. "He's not who he used to be," she said quietly. "You were right, Catherine. He ruined everything himself." I just nodded. Because what can you say to a woman who once laughed when I was humiliated? Everyone gets what they deserve, sometimes not immediately, but eventually. Henry tried to see his son. I didn't forbid it, but he came rarely. Once, he stood in the doorway, watched the little boy play, and whispered, "He doesn't even recognize me." I looked at him and thought, you did everything yourself to be a stranger to him. A year after the divorce, he wrote me a letter. Paper, handwritten, for the first time ever. It contained only a few sentences. "You were right. I didn't just lose you. I lost myself when I stopped valuing you." I reread it, sighed, and burned it. Because that was no longer my past. It was ashes. His betrayal destroyed everything he had. But for me, it became a beginning, painful, but real. And perhaps the worst thing for him wasn't that I left, but that I learned to be happy without him.